Hello there and welcome. This is Mikhail or Michael speaking, and as always before the video starts, I want to use this opportunity to express my eternal gratitude towards those who decided to support me financially, be it through Patreon, PayPal, or Super Thanks. I really appreciate your generosity, so thank you friends and have a blessed day. Today's video I will start with Bakhmut City with some breaking news. As a result of a successful offensive operations here to the north of the city, Russian forces were able to successfully counterattack from the settlement of Berkhivka and Yagodne, inflicted heavy losses on the Ukrainian forces on the open fields in this area, and as a result of that, forced them to retreat. And as a result of those successful offensive operations, this is exactly how much territories Russians were able to recapture from the Ukrainian side. As you can see with this recent territorial gain, Russians are able to significantly improve their overall tactical position, greatly increasing the buffer zone around settlements of Berkhivka and Yagodne, towards which Ukrainians have been attacking ever since they were able to do so. And first time ever since the Ukrainian offensive operations around Bakhmut in attempt to encircle it started, were able to significantly reverse those Ukrainian gains and what would seem retake initiative. With it, we can see that the settlement of Bogdanivka is yet again within Russian reach, and same could be said about this road here and the village of Khromove. Russian sources claim that the attacks here in this area have not yet stopped as Russians continued their offensive operations into the next day. Before we leave the northern flank of Bakhmut, it is important to also report that with Russians attacking here in this area, they also attack in the general direction of Orekhovo-Vasilivka along E40 highway and are engaged in positional style of fighting near the settlement of Zalishняnsky. However, Ukrainian resilience and constant counterattacks are denying Russians any advancements here in this area, but the intensity of Russian attacks are slowly growing, and this territorial gain is a great example of just that. To those who doubt this report and would call it as a pro-Russian, I would refer you to this pro-Ukrainian map called Deep State. In fact, they also acknowledged this recent Russian territorial gain in their map. So this was the situation of yesterday, and this is the situation of today. From the north part of Bakhmut, let's move to the south. And here Russians also retook initiative and attacked all across the front. Those Russian attacks came from the settlements of Zelenopilye and Kurdyumovka in attempt to regain some of the previously lost positions in the open fields, as well as in the direction of Andreevka, not only directly but to the flanks of it, in the direction of Klishevka, and to the north of it, within this tactical height, where here Russians are doing everything in their power to reach this important trench network system and recapture it yet again. As a result of those offensive operations, Russians were able to successfully advance here within this forest and take this much territory from the Ukrainian side. As you can see, although it is not that big, but here on this front it really matters. As with each of these successful territorial gains, Russians slowly improving their overall situation on the front, getting closer to this important trench network system, and like I said in my previous video, highly endangering settlement of Klishevka and are putting it on the verge of recapturing. Before we leave this front, I want to ask you a question, whether you remember how Ukrainian side reacted to the capture of Bakhmut, when they immediately said that this was exactly their plan, as Russians would over-concentrate their troops within the city, which will allow Ukrainians to do massive successful flank attacks, encircle the city, and destroy the Russian forces within it. Now, not only did we saw this Ukrainian counteroffensive around Bakhmut back down, we are now witnessing the opposite of what we were told, as Russians regain initiative on this front and are now constantly counterattacking, threatening the recapture of all recently lost positions around the city, and even achieving more territorial gains, even within this year. In any way, not only I want to use this moment as an opportunity to ask you to support this video if you liked it so far, by a like, comment, and if you haven't subscribed, a subscription. The faster you do it under this video, the more likely this video will be promoted to more people, thus increasing its reach and help this channel growth. But I also want to know your opinion on this whole situation around Bakhmut. What do you think will happen? Whether this Russian attack is a one-time thing, or we are to witness more and more territorial changes in favor of Russians. Again, not always do I answer to your comments, but I always read them as I find them extremely interesting. Plus, I sometimes learn from your expertise as well. Thank you in advance, and let's continue on. Now, the next front that we will discuss is the front near Avdiivka, where Russians also continued their offensive operations all around the city, and there are some interesting news for me to report. First, let's touch the Sardon Flank, where currently the situation is developing as I record this video. Here, Russians continued their offensive operations in the general direction of village Severne and Tonenke, attacked along Vadyane in the direction of Pervomaisky, and fought in attempt to repel Ukrainian attacks in the general direction of Pisky. Russians were also recorded attacking in the direction of Avdiivka itself from the settlement of Opitne, from the settlement of Spartak, and within the industrial zone to the very south of Avdiivka town. First, let's discuss the situation within Pervomaisky-Pisky settlements. Here, Ukrainians continued their offensive operations in attempt to recapture Pervomaisky, reach this important intersection and the bridge located here, and it doesn't seem that Russian counterattacks and defensive techniques are very effective against those Ukrainian attacks. As a result of battles here in this area, Ukrainians were able to advance and recapture a small portion of the village, forcing Russians to retreat and take better defensive positions along the road and near the bridge. While Ukrainians advanced here, Russians were able to advance along the road to the northwest of Pisky, perhaps in a race of time to penetrate Ukrainian defensive lines here and completely cut off Ukrainian forces here in the remaining parts. Currently, they are somewhat successful, and as a result of offensive operations, were able to capture a small portion of the road and open fields along it, about this much. And if Russians are continue to be as successful here as they are now, like I said previously, the entire contingent of Ukrainian forces fighting within this portion of the settlement can be in danger of encirclement and full destruction. Before we discuss the situation on the northern flank of Avdiivka, let's quickly discuss the Russian offensive operations within industrial zone here, where the positional battles have been ongoing ever since 2014. Some reports suggest that this is where Ukrainians have most intense and strong fortification on the entire Avdiivka front. On the video, you can see result of Russian bombardments and direct hits from the Russian tanks. This, of course, is in attempt to destroy or at least damage those defensive fortifications to a point when they become almost impossible to use. Recent reports suggest that Russians were somewhat successful in that endeavor, and Ukrainians are slowly withdrawing from this area as the intensity of Russian attacks and artillery bombardments are making the lives of Ukrainian forces here as unbearable as possible. With this news are coming with the news of Wagner troops returning to the fronts and being used exactly within this area. Now, the Wagner troops obviously has a lot of experience storming strong fortifications, as they did in Bakhmut and did so successfully, and in my opinion, they are the best shock troops that are currently stationed and fight in Ukraine. Now, at the time of recording, there are no territorial changes, but both Russian and Ukrainian sources claim that this is a critical moment for both sides, as the battle for this sector will determine whether Russians will start storm Avdiivka officially for the first time all throughout this war, or will be bogged down and forced to rely on their comrades attacking from other directions. From here, let's discuss the situation on the very northern flank of Avdiivka, where the Russians also continued their offensive operations. They attacked in the direction of Novokalinova across the rail line, as well as attacked in the direction of village of Novobakhmutivka and Ochertini, in attempt to take full control over this area here. They also attacked within Stepova village in attempt to capture it, and to the very flanks of it. There were also reported attacks in the direction of Avdiivka coke plant, where some limited Russian success was recorded. At this point in time, those claims are still to be confirmed, so I will wait on that. Of course, like I said in one of my previous videos, if Russians are to successfully advance here in this area, not only they will be able to attack in the direction of Novokalinova from multiple directions, the settlement of Novobakhmutivka and Solovyova would also be in danger, but also they were able to attack with full force across these open fields on a wider front in the direction of Berdichi, Semenivka and Arlivka. If those Russian attacks are to be successful, we are to see Ukrainian front here on this sector crumble within weeks or even days. Again, the comment section is for a reason, so feel free to express your opinion about this particular portion of my analysis. With this, I end today's video. Hopefully it was informative enough and was to your liking. If it was, please consider supporting it with any means you consider necessary. The only thing I can say is thank you in advance. As always, humanity calls me to condemn all violence against human beings. Have a good day, and always remember, Russia will be free and great.